And now I'm going to turn it back over to Rob Ortt.
Well, thank you very much, Congresswoman. I suspect you'll have to come back up here in a moment because I think most of the questions might be directed for you. But we will now open it up. Well, I guess I'll close by, first of all, thanking the Congresswoman for being here. She's very busy. She's going to D.C. later in like a short time. And she's going to go do her job that her constituents elected her to do and that she does so well. And, of course, we are going to do the best we can here to fight against what will no doubt be hundreds of terrible, radical bills that will be perpetrated on the people of New York over the next several days. So I want to thank her for being here. I want to thank all my colleagues for being here. And with that, we will open it up to questions. On-topic questions. Which means the topic of...
I wanted to ask the Assemblyman Barclay about the, I would say, shenanigans, the thing that went on with pulling the bill honoring October 7th. There was...
Yeah, we were obviously disappointed. We feel like it got pulled for political reasons. We feel it was a good bill and it ought to have been at least brought up to the floor for a vote.
So what happened along the way?
Well, they serve in the majority. The Speaker controls his ability to what bills get on the floor and what don't get on the floor, and they use the power they have as majority to make sure the bill didn't get to the floor.
Okay, next question. Robert Gavin, Buffalo News.
Hi.
On topic.
Thank you. This is for Representative Stefanik. The leaders of the two houses here in Albany have been very critical of you and your 6 Republican colleagues, basically saying, why are you supporting the president's bill? They had a press conference this morning saying it would cost $13 billion in Medicaid cuts. And there's been some of your colleagues in other states, such as Iowa, when they've mentioned support from the bill, they've gotten boos and whatnot. What do you say to the criticism from the Democrats here about that this bill by the president is going to really hurt New York? And they've consistently said to the press, ask people such as you. So my question to you is, what do you say to what they're saying?
Sure. So this bill, if we do not extend the Trump tax cuts, it will be the largest tax increase in our nation's history. Kathy Hochul supports the largest tax increase on top of the highest tax state in the nation in New York State. This bill also includes increased funding for border security, the construction of over 700 miles of border wall, as well as hiring 10,000 additional law enforcement to deal with border security. Kathy Hochul opposes that and instead prioritizes sanctuary city. It gets rid of these Green New Scan subsidies that have been creating these solar farms taking over our farmland in New York State, which people adamantly oppose. Kathy Hochul wants those subsidies to fall into place, to continue to stay into place. It also unleashes energy independence to lower energy prices and make it abundant for hardworking Americans. And yet in New York, Kathy Hochul opposes that at every opportunity. And on the Medicaid question, and this is very important, Kathy Hochul wants to use your hard-earned taxpayer dollars, over $1 billion, to fund Medicaid for illegals. What we believe as Republicans in Washington is that we should strengthen Medicaid, get rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse, which there is rampant, over $20 billion in New York, and not fund these programs for illegals. Instead, we want to improve Medicaid for New Yorkers who qualify, and that is what people support, whether you're Republicans, Independents, or Democrats. But you and the media, do some honest reporting on the facts in this bill. We are not taking away Medicaid benefits. We are getting rid of Medicaid benefits for illegals specifically to improve them for New Yorkers who qualify.
Nice to see you. On the subject of the Trump one big beautiful bill, as it were, it's projected that it will result in thousands of New Yorkers, thousands of your constituents losing access to their benefits. Overall, the bill is expected to reduce available resources for the lowest income people while raising resources by cutting taxes for the highest earners. Are you comfortable with people in your district losing out on health care to fund tax cuts for rich people?
That's false talking points. You know, in Washington, it's always interesting. The media are stenographers for the Democrat Party. It appears to be the case in Albany and New York State as well. Nothing new. One of the bills that we're voting on this week is defunding NPR because, again, we are not going to stand for this stenography for Democrats instead of accurately reporting what's in the bill. What this bill does is it improves these programs, specifically Medicaid, for law-abiding New Yorkers who qualify, rather than the over $1 billion bailout for illegals, which is what Kathy Hochul wants to use your hard-earned taxpayer dollars for. Also, it extends the Trump tax cuts. It expands the child tax credit. It makes school choice available for families, which is a pro-parent policy, not just Republicans, but independents and Democrats as well. It increases border security. It unleashes energy independence. It will create the greatest economic boom. How do we know this? Because look at the first term of President Trump. We had the strongest economy in our nation's history, and we are going to get back to that again very quickly. Already look at the stats. So no, Kathy Hochul does not support this bill because she wants to continue raising taxes on New Yorkers. She wants to continue putting illegals first. She wants to continue sanctuary city policies that cost billions of dollars for New Yorkers so that illegals qualify for these programs. We are not going to stand for it. We have a mandate for the American people. I am proud to make sure that we pass this legislation to make good on our promises that the American people, we promised that to the American people, and we are certainly going to deliver it.
Right now, it appears it's very much up for debate whether the $40,000 SALT cap change is going to remain on the table of the Senate. You know, your colleague Mike Lawler came in the other day. He said he would be a definite no if that were lowered. What about you? Do you stand by the $40,000? Do you see that as non-negotiable with the Senate?
Well, I negotiated it, and I think it's important that New Yorkers make sure that we have strong tax relief. But let's get to the root of the problem, which is we are the highest tax state in the nation. So number one, we need a new governor to cut taxes for New Yorkers. In the meantime, you better believe I'm going to continue to advocate for hundreds of billions of tax cuts for hardworking New Yorkers who are paying the price of this failed leadership. So I'm not going to set myself on a number. I am going to say that I helped deliver that in a conversation with President Trump in the White House, as well as my colleagues in the New York delegation, as well as the Speaker of the House, to get that deal done. And for Kathy Hochul to criticize it, that's her criticizing hundreds of billions of dollars of a real tax cut instead of these fake tax scams that she's putting forward in her bloated budget would actually increase the spending for hardworking New Yorkers. No, I'm going to make sure, as I did, that we have tax relief for New Yorkers. I know in the slim majority that we need to use every tool we possible. I don't negotiate with you. I negotiate with the President of the United States and the Speaker of the House.
Are you concerned at all that the controversy around this federal budget bill will actually have a negative effect on, I guess, your ideas for policies and progress for New York? Because it could make congressional seats harder to hold on to Republicans and even possibly governor's race and win for Republicans.
No, what I'm concerned about is this bloated budget from Albany is you're not asking about that. Here we are in Albany. It's single-party Democrat rule, and Kathy Hochul has failed our state. What we are doing in Washington is to address the affordability crisis by cutting taxes. We are addressing the energy crisis by unleashing energy independence. We are addressing the border crisis by increasing funding for border security as well as law enforcement agents. We are actually dealing with all the challenges that have been created in this country with Joe Biden, Kathy Hochul, and Democrats for 4 years. So you're asking me about this in Albany? You know my position. I strongly support all of those provisions, and so do New Yorkers. What is going to be on the ballot next year is Kathy Hochul's failed leadership. And if you look at the poll numbers, she is the most unpopular governor in modern times, and her own lieutenant governor, her number 2, just announced he's primarying her. That's what people are focused on going into next November, and they are going to reward the Republicans for delivering on our promises to the American people.
Hi, Congresswoman. So if you were governor looking at a big border budget, where specifically would you want to cut that down if you were to come to Albany?
So first, you need to look at everything. You need to look at opportunities for savings in every program, waste, fraud, and abuse, get rid of green new scam programs. You also need to, and President Trump, I think, showed this very well, and I spoke with the Senate conference and Assembly conference about this ahead of time. There is so much action that can be taken on day one in executive orders. I would look at that model under President Trump, where he has successfully signed a number of executive orders. We need to do that in Albany. Albany has the most bloated budget out of any other state in the nation. We have to be able to find significant savings. I would also work with the state Senate Republicans and the state Assembly Republicans who have been working on these issues for decades to try to push back on the reckless spending. So this would be a partnership with these legislators. I'm standing here today.
Grace Ashford, New York Times.
Hi, Congresswoman. As you know, the governor is constrained by the laws of the state, which require the state to pay for some health care for undocumented people. No matter who is the governor, if you were the governor, you would also be constrained by that. So I'm wondering if you could sort of speak to, if you were the governor, what your kind of plan of approach would be. And then as a congresswoman, knowing that that is the reality for the people of the state of New York, why do you feel that it's appropriate to cut $13 billion from the state's bill, knowing that what the only real effect that will have is to take away health care from, documented and undocumented New Yorkers alike?
Well, first of all, the Democrat governor, Kathy Hochul, supports taxpayer dollars going towards illegals. I haven't heard her speak out about that. Instead, I've heard her speak in support of that. I fundamentally disagree. I'm standing here with my colleagues who also disagree. Everyday New Yorkers don't want their hard-earned taxpayer dollars going towards programs for illegals rather than law-abiding New Yorkers who are here legally. So I think you can take executive action. I think you can work with the legislature to address that, but not on our watch. We are not going to fund taxpayer benefits for illegals in the state of New York. We are going to focus on New Yorkers first rather than this illegals first, New Yorkers last that Kathy Hochul has in place.
Channel 13, Elise Klein.
Sorry, WMHT. Congresswoman, can you explain a little bit more about why you support taking away funding from PBS and NPR, simply because you kind of explained you don't agree with the reporting, but can you talk about why you think you have that right when it comes to the freedom of the press?
I didn't say I don't agree with their reporting. I said they've been exposed as being stenographers for the left. These are entities that have promoted the Russia hoax. These are entities that promote whatever talking points the left puts out. Even in my own district, one of the public radios incessantly has put false information out, including on election day, where voting locations are. We are not going to stand for that. And for all of those of you in the press who are not with taxpayer-funded press entities, it is a competitive environment. There's lots of opportunity out there. Taxpayer dollars shouldn't be going to promote NPR and other organizations that are pushing forth their view. If you look at NPR, the studies, I think it was 0 Republicans or 0 conservatives on NPR. 0. You have the head of NPR who is an avowed anti-Republican. That is not reflective of fair media in this country. You all have First Amendment rights from other media outlets. You use it. You don't need taxpayer funding for it.
Nick Reisman, Politico.
I was wondering about your thoughts on what's going on in Los Angeles today over the last couple of days and President Trump's decision to deploy the National Guard there.
I fully support President Trump's decision to deploy the National Guard. I think Leader Barclay was spot on. The fact that you have Kathy Hochul criticizing it, but she is the same governor that deployed the National Guard into our prison systems, the hypocrisy, New Yorkers see through that. It's outrageous. We need law and order on our streets. We need law enforcement, and we need to enforce the laws on the books, and that includes border security. I believe when you see this in a state like California, it is a result of failed sanctuary city policies and appeasement for violent criminals over a number of years. I stand strongly with our law enforcement officers, and I know the members of this assembly and the state Senate on the Republican side stand strongly with our law enforcement officers as well, but I fully support it.
Jimmy Gilpine, Wall Street Journal.
Jimmy.
Maybe I took my question, but I was wondering if you could talk generally about your thoughts about the increase in immigration enforcement that we've seen since President Trump took office again. Are you happy with how it's going? Are there any parts of it that you'd like to see increased, reduced, et cetera? And I guess calling up the National Guard in response to some counter-protests might be part of that.
I fully support President Trump's executive actions, as well as it's why we're working so hard to get this reconciliation package done to make sure the resources are there for immigration law enforcement officers. That's both ICE, Border Patrol, and CBP. It's also important, and I'm advocating for increasing those numbers along the northern border as well. Look, this is a result of 4 years of a wide open border under Joe Biden, with upwards of tens of millions of illegals in our country. We passed the Laken Riley Act, which was very, very important, strong border security. And think about that. The majority of Democrats voted against that bill. So we've put forth border security legislation after border security legislation. I think President Trump is taking exactly the right actions, enforcing the laws on the books, putting Americans first. And frankly, this is what he campaigned on. And the reality is he is more popular today than he was on Election Day in his handling of the border. So I strongly support it. And certainly we're going to advocate for the northern border issues, as I always have.
Last question, New York Post, Von Bolden.
Hey, Congresswoman. The Democratic leaders this morning in their press conference, they said they want a full repeal of the SALT cap. They also don't want cuts, changes to Medicaid. Why can't they have both?
Well, first of all, Democrats were in power for a number of years. They failed to get any tax relief for New Yorkers. It is Republicans, New York Republicans, who are advocating, effectively, mind you, for hundreds of billions of dollars of tax cuts for New Yorkers. And first of all, I'm sure you also didn't hear from them any proposal on how they're going to cut taxes for New Yorkers, and they just want to blame it on SALT. We are going to get this done. We will deliver on this promise that we have made to New Yorkers. And on the Medicaid issue, sure, I'm sure they want to continue funding over $1 billion for illegals. We want to improve, protect, and secure Medicaid for New Yorkers, hard-earned taxpayer dollars, making sure they're going to New Yorkers first and not illegal. So we're going to continue working through this process. It'll take the next couple of weeks, and the discussions are ongoing between the House and the Senate right now.